Piranha Moldings Factory Oven, 23rd of December, 2010. Runcorn, England. The oven was cold when Alan Catterall climbed inside it. He was 54 years old. A crowbar was in his hands. Melted plastic clung to the steel walls where kayaks were baked into shape inside the Piranha Moldings factory oven, and he had been sent in to scrape it away. It was routine, filthy, claustrophobic. Nothing warned him this would be the last place he would ever stand. Outside, on the factory floor, another worker walked to the control panel. The man was due to marry Alan's daughter. He did not know Alan was inside the Piranha Moldings factory oven. He pressed the switch. The doors slammed shut and locked instantly. The oven was designed with no window and no alarm. Inside, the heat surged, not gradually, but violently. The temperature rose to deadly levels within moments. Alan screamed and beat the doors with the crowbar. The jury later heard that his calls for help were lost in the roar of machinery. What was not heard was the panic, the air becoming impossible to breathe, the pain striking instantly. At 280 degrees Celsius, the human body cannot survive. Every second caused irreversible damage. Workers nearby later said they sensed something wrong before they understood. An unusual smell raised alarm. Dark fluid pooled outside the oven as smoke escaped through its seams. By the time the doors were opened, shock had already taken him. He died on the 23rd of December 2010 from fatal burns. An escape hatch was installed later, after a man had already suffered and died alone inside steel. The crushed ice machine. At a poultry processing plant in Clinton, Iowa, in the 1970s or early 1980s, a worker nicknamed Barney began his shift like any other. The building was old. Portions of the plant dated back to the late 1800s. Much of the machinery was malfunctioning, obsolete, or simply worn out. The job was to keep it running. To meet the plant's constant need for crushed ice, there stood in an isolated corner of the top floor a creaky old device. It was a dangerously outdated industrial ice machine, a hulking V-shaped metal box roughly the size of a dump truck. In cycles, it froze inch-thick sheets of ice on inclined walls. The surfaces warmed, the ice slipped downward, and the slabs fed into the mouth of a central trough. At the bottom waited powerful claw-like mechanical devices, followed by a screw auger that gathered the crushed ice and forced it into a network of tubes carrying ice to workstations. The machine was unreliable. The ice sheets often failed to slip free. Production slowed until someone was sent to fix it. The task required physically entering the ice machine and hammering loose the stuck ice. Barney had developed a dangerous shortcut. Instead of fully deactivating the internal claws and auger, he climbed in anyway. He straddled the walls, smashed away the ice jam, and climbed back out before the crusher activated. It saved time. It worked, until it did not. On one shift, he lost his footing or misjudged the cycle. No one saw it happen. The machine engaged. For a moment, the plant continued as normal. Conveyors moved. Workers waited for ice. Then the system delivered something horrific. Fragments of his body were transported through the system to the production floor. The machine was shut off. The floor went quiet. Investigators later called it one of the worst factory deaths ever reported. The meat grinder fatality. In 2019, a 35-year-old woman named Jill Greninger was working at a food processing plant in Pennsylvania. The air was wet and heavy with the smell of raw meat. Industrial motors roared constantly. Beneath her position ran an active meat grinder. Open, exposed. Powerful enough to consume hundreds of pounds every hour. She was working on a ladder above the machine. There were no witnesses. It is believed she either tripped or her clothing became caught while she was working overhead. What happened next was catastrophic. She fell headfirst into the grinder. The augers engaged immediately, pulling her in with immense force. The machine did not slow. The factory did not stop. Conveyors kept moving. Alarms stayed silent. No one noticed she was gone. As time passed, the machine began making a strange noise. Metal resisting. The rhythm breaking. Only then did workers shut it down. It was too late. The machine had to be dismantled to recover her remains. What they uncovered was devastating. Jill Greninger was no longer recognizable. Investigators later confirmed she died from severe mechanical trauma. Her final moments were likely unheard amid the constant industrial noise. The Laminated Man. In 1964, in the United States, a vinyl calendaring factory worker named Robert Hastings disappeared during a night shift at a plastic plant in Detroit. His absence was mistaken for quitting. No report was filed. The machines kept running. The calendaring line flattened molten vinyl under crushing heat and pressure. Material was pulled forward between massive rollers without pause. Anything caught inside was fed inward, stretched, compressed, sealed. At some point, Hastings was dragged into the system. No emergency stop was triggered. No scream cut through the noise. For weeks, the factory operated normally. Rolls of plastic grew thicker, longer, heavier. Each pass added another layer. Whatever had gone in was pressed flatter with every rotation. A month later, his remains were discovered inside a massive roll of plastic sheeting. He had been compressed to a thickness of 1/16 of an inch and stretched to a length of 31 feet. The roll was nearly shipped. The only identifiable object was his laminated driver's license. One grim assumption is that Hastings survived the initial pull, conscious long enough to pass through multiple cycles. In a workplace accident, a man became a product, permanently recorded among the deadliest factory deaths in history. Sweet Factory Incident, 20th of October 2017. Russia. Stary Oskol. Natalia Nemetz, a 36-year-old worker, walked into her shift like any other morning. She never walked out. She fell into a container of boiling caramel while working in a Russian sweet factory. What those words do not capture is the smell. Burnt sugar, thick in the air, clinging to walls, lungs, and memory. Russian outlet Lenta.ru reported that when investigators arrived, she was already dead. Machines hummed. Caramel churned. As if nothing had happened. A co-worker later said she poured something into the vat, slipped, and fell. No scream was ever heard. Co-workers searched the factory, behind belts, beneath pipes, until someone froze. Her legs were sticking out of a vat of molten caramel, boiling hot, metal blades churning beneath the surface. One co-worker said she did not cry. Another said she was boiled alive. The heat may have stolen her voice before terror ever could. However it happened, the ending was the same. She was trapped, crushed, cooked alive. The Slavyanka factory declined to comment. In Stary Oskol, the caramel kept flowing. For those who found her, sweetness never smelled the same again. Boiler Factory Incident, 2020. Wisconsin, United States. Daniel Mercer was part of a team working on a boiler when they forced open a side door after misreading a gauge. The boiler was full of scalding water and steam. It burst outward. The release was sudden and violent, catching the crew completely off guard. What appeared stable moments earlier was, in reality, a sealed pressure hazard. Daniel was critically burned from the waist down. Scalding water flooded his boots. The injuries were immediately life-threatening. He escaped outside but collapsed. Co-workers rushed to help, but confusion replaced clear emergency protocol. Instead of proper cooling treatment, he was wrapped in a thermal blanket. The heat was trapped against his injuries. Medical experts later stated this mistake significantly worsened his condition. Daniel Mercer later died. The incident sent shockwaves through the contracting team and triggered an immediate investigation. Investigators reported it as a fatal incident that could have been prevented.